Once upon a time in a faraway kingdom, there lived a young princess named Sophie. Princess Sophie loved to explore the enchanted forest near the castle and make new animal friends. One day while walking through the forest, Sophie stumbled upon a baby unicorn. Its leg was stuck in a tree root. "Oh no! You poor thing," said Sophie. Carefully, she worked to free the baby unicorn's leg. "There, all better." The unicorn nuzzled Sophie's hand in thanks. Sophie decided to bring her new friend back to the castle so she could care for it properly. When Sophie arrived at the castle with the baby unicorn, her parents the king and queen were surprised. "What a marvelous creature," said the queen. "Wherever did you find it?" Sophie told them the whole story of how she rescued the poor unicorn in the forest. "Please let me care for it here at the castle," she begged. The kind king and queen could not say no to their precious daughter. "Of course you may care for the unicorn," said the king. "You did a good deed in saving it." Sophie clapped her hands excitedly and led the baby unicorn to the royal stables for food, water and rest. She decided to name the unicorn Pearl because of her beautiful iridescent horn. Over the next few weeks, Princess Sophie diligently cared for Pearl the unicorn. She brushed Pearl's silvery white coat until it shone. She hand-fed Pearl only the freshest oats and apples from the royal orchards. Each night, Pearl slept soundly in a cozy stall filled with sweet-smelling hay. Pearl grew bigger and stronger every day under Sophie's loving care. The two became inseparable friends, frolicking together daily through the lush royal gardens. One sunny morning, Sophie decided to take Pearl on a picnic in the forest. She packed a picnic basket full of delicious treats like jam tarts, roasted chicken, and fresh fruit. Then she saddled up Pearl for the ride to the forest. As Sophie rode high on Pearl's back through the shady forest path, she felt as free and spirited as the unicorn she rode. When they arrived at the picnic spot near a babbling brook, Sophie unpacked the picnic basket. Pearl munched on apples while Sophie ate jam tarts and drank tea from a silver flask. After their meal, Sophie braided flower garlands for herself and Pearl. The two frolicked in a sunny meadow, chasing butterflies and making flower crowns. The beautiful day lifted Sophie's heart with joy. As the sun began to set, it was time for Sophie and Pearl to head back to the castle. But suddenly, ominous clouds filled the sky. A clap of thunder boomed overhead. Pearl let out a frightened whinny. Torrents of rain poured down. Sophie hurried to calm the anxious unicorn. "It's all right, Pearl. We'll be home soon." Yet the storm raged on. The wind howled fiercely around them. Mud sucked at Pearl's hooves. Sophie could hardly see through the rain and gloom. Poor Sophie did not know which way led back to the castle. She and Pearl were lost in the dark, scary storm. As lightning flashed ominously, Sophie spotted a tall, shadowy tower in the distance. "Look, Pearl, we can take shelter there." The tower appeared abandoned, but it would provide refuge. Cold and soaked, Sophie and Pearl made their way toward the tower. Inside, it was dusty and cobwebbed, with only a rickety staircase spiraling upward. With no other options, they began to climb the long stairway. Higher and higher Sophie and Pearl climbed. Sophie started worrying they had entered an enchanted tower. After what seemed an eternity, they reached the top room. It was empty except for a large mirror that filled one wall. As Sophie examined the elaborate gilded mirror frame, she noticed a tiny keyhole. She took the silver key she always wore around her neck on a chain and turned it in the keyhole. Suddenly, the mirror's surface shimmered like water. Sophie gasped as Pearl let out a surprised neigh. Should they step through the mirror? Just then, lightning flashed outside the tower window. Sophie took Pearl's bridle. "Come on, Pearl. Let's go together." Holding tightly to each other, they leapt into the mirror. Sophie and Pearl tumbled out of the mirror onto soft grass. When Sophie stood up, she could not believe her eyes. Before them was a marvelous crystal city nestled in a verdant valley. "Pearl, I think we're in the Unicorn Kingdom," exclaimed Sophie. Pearl joyfully galloped through the lush meadows blooming with aromatic flowers in every color. Sophie crossed glistening streams and discovered bushes weighed down with sweet, ripe berries. She plucked vibrant fruit to share with Pearl. At last, they came to the glittering gates of the Crystal City. A guard with a long, spiraled unicorn horn stepped forward. "State your name and business," he demanded. "I am Princess Sophie. The mirror in the tower brought my friend Pearl and I here," she explained. The guard's stern look softened. "A human friend to our unicorns is always welcome." The gates opened, and Sophie and Pearl entered the breathtaking city. Sophie could not believe her eyes. Unicorns of all sizes and colors strolled through the city's crystal lanes and open plazas. Shimmering fountains spilled liquid rainbows into pools dotted with water lilies. Pearl frolicked happily with the other unicorns. "Welcome to Crystalia." A great booming voice spoke behind Sophie. She turned to see a towering unicorn with a flowing silver mane and massive, sparkling onyx horn. "I am Noctis, ruler of the unicorns. We have watched over you since you first showed kindness to Pearl." Sophie couldn't believe the great unicorn king himself was speaking to her. Thank you, your majesty," she stammered with a curtsy. Noctis laughed deeply. "Polite as well. Come, you must dine with us tonight." He led Sophie through the city. At the Crystal Palace, they feasted on berries, flower nectar, and meadowsweet water from golden chalices. After the meal, Noctis had one of his unicorn guards lead Sophie to a luxurious guest suite for the night. The bed was piled high with velvety blankets and plush pillows. Sophie fell into a deep, cozy sleep. The next morning, Sophie awoke to brilliant sunshine streaming through soaring arched windows. After dressing, she found a delicious breakfast of fragrant tea, fresh berries, and nutty granola left bedside. Refreshed from the meal, Sophie set out to explore more of Crystalia. As she strolled through the city, the unicorns she passed would bow their heads in respect. Pearl pranced along merrily next to her. Sophie lost track of how long she wandered, discovering crystalline gardens, libraries stuffed with books, and galleries filled with gorgeous art. But eventually she grew homesick for her family and her kingdom. Sophie found King Noctis holding court in the throne room. "Your Majesty, you have been so kind, but I must return home now." Noctis nodded solemnly. "We shall miss you, but understand. Go safely, princess." Then he tapped his horn to the floor. A mirror like the one from the tower appeared. Sophie hugged Pearl tightly, promising to visit again one day. Then she stepped through the mirror back home. Sophie tumbled out the other side into the tower room, with rain still lashing the windows. Holding her enchanted silver key, she rushed downstairs and back into the stormy night, sloshing her way toward the distant lights of the castle. Soon the castle guard spotted Sophie. "Princess! You're all right," they cried in joyful relief. Once back home safe and dry, Sophie told her parents about all her adventures in the Unicorn Kingdom over hot cocoa and apple pie by the fire. The Queen reminded Sophie that though adventures can be fun, it's important to be careful. Sophie promised to always let someone know before wandering off. With Pearl the unicorn by her side, Sophie looked forward to whatever magical adventures awaited her next.